What's up, everybody? Boba Fett here. Welcome back to the Multiverse of Mayhem. Today it's going to be something a little bit different on the channel, and that's where I'm going to be doing a bit of a movie review of Dune Part 2, a movie that came out recently. And I thought I'd just switch it up a bit, do something new and fresh. You guys let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. And there will be a announcement at the end of this video, so do stay tuned for that. And we recently, for our podcast portion of our channel, we did 2023 movies, and they got me thinking, well, I do plan on doing that eventually, of all the again, but that next time will be 2024 movies. But in the meantime, I thought, why don't we go and review some movies as they come out over the course of the year. And to start, we'll do Dune Part 2, because it's a new movie and it's been doing very well at the box office, and reviews have been very positive about the movie. However, funnily enough, this is my third time trying to make this video to you and get it out to you guys. First time I did put it up, I realized there was a issue with my headset, and I thought I got it taken care of, so I went to go do it again, and the same sort of issue was happening. So I will definitely fix that and get it to you guys later on. But for now, I'm doing this like this. I have some gameplay of Nuketown Zombies from Not Annoying Commentary, and I will link that in the description below if you guys just want to check out his channel or whatever. But let's jump right into the Dune review. And I'm going to do this is I'm going to try my best to get everything out of my head as much as I can. I'm not going to go crazy in detail and all that. For now, I want to sort of do non-spoiler review, and then kind of dive into a little more spoilers, and also talk about some of the differences in the book versus the movie. I'm not going to go crazy into that because that's a lot, and there's a lot of differences, but I'll go over the few that I think are most interesting. So, yeah. And I've seen this movie twice at this point, and I've loved it, every second of it, and might be recency bias or whatever you want to call it, but I would definitely say Dune Part 2 is one of, or if not, the greatest movies I've ever seen. And believe me when I say I've seen a lot of movies, and Dune Part 2 is up there, and one of my favorite movies I've ever seen. I mean, yes, you could say this movie's long, and there are moments where it's like, okay, they drag it out being 3 hours long, but at least what I think is that Dune Part 2 doesn't have those moments. Yeah, it might have some slow moments, but those slow moments are needed for the sake of the story. And without it, it would be very different, and it just wouldn't work. And something I love is just how the director, Denis Villeneuve, did everything to make sure this movie was great, and that people would love it. And how he does that is remarkable, because I think when you're invested into a story, you're more interested in the movie, and it grabs your attention more, and that's really what happens in this movie. And the actors and actresses know that what they're going to be in will be worth it, and in doing so, they actually take a lot of pay cuts And that is the case with this movie because as recently it was revealed how much some of these actors and actresses were making in the movie, and a lot of them, you have these huge actors who are receiving pay cuts so that the movie's effects and all that could be a lot better. And I think that's what we ultimately need to focus on more in movies, and not just blow our entire budget and below your entire budget on just getting all these great actors or actresses to be in it. It's like a good example of what I mean is if you look at one of Marvel's newest shows, Secret Invasion. The budget of that show was $200 million, and it was like a piece of garbage, right? Because like so much of the budget for that show went over to just getting all these actors or actresses to be in the show. Whereas in Dune Part 2, I mean, you have like all these A-list actors like Josh Brolin, obviously from Marvel. You have Noah Thanos. Obviously, he didn't have that big of a role in the movie, but obviously, you would think that an actor like him would want a good amount of money, but I believe he only took $500,000 or something like that for this movie because he knew that the story would be better, and he took those pay cuts so that all the effects and all that could ultimately be better, and you'd be more excited watching the movie, and the movie would ultimately be better. But now, speaking of the actors and actresses and the people who made Dune Part 2, I just want to say congratulations. I mean, the movie is obviously being so well received and all this. And it really shows the dedication that was made to this movie and how everyone was so invested in making it. I have some of these actors and actresses who are giving the best performances of their career so far. One of them being Timothée Chalamet, who plays the main character, Paul Atreides. And I especially think that in this movie, he definitely gives probably his best performance he's had in his entire career. That's just me. Obviously, if you guys have seen other Timothée Chalamet movies and you disagree, do let me know what you guys think. But I think this movie really solidifies him as, not solidifies him as like a great actor. He's a good actor that really kind of is seen in this movie, I think. But I feel like a lot of people, when it comes to him, believe that he's just overrated and people only like him because of his looks. I mean, before this movie, I would say I can see why, but especially after Dune, even both Dune Part 1 and 2, it really shows that he can do these more serious roles. I mean, he has other serious roles, but I mean, like, this warrior, and you know what I mean? If you know what I mean, I'm sorry. And he's phenomenal in this role. He really, as Paul in the second one especially, he's just throws his full dedication in, and there's so many scenes in the movie where he's just intimidating, and you can see like him kind of growing into that leadership role that he didn't want to be in, because you can see it throughout especially from the beginning to like maybe I'd say beginning of Dune Part 2 is, he doesn't want to be like a leader. He's just surviving and just ultimately wants to get revenge on his family. Not revenge on his family. Revenge for his family from the Harkonnens, because obviously they killed almost everybody he knew, including his father. He's only with the Fremen to survive and ultimately take out the Harkonnens. But then towards the middle to the end of the movie, he becomes this leader, ultimately leading the Fremen to safety, or whatever you want to call it, leading them to paradise, essentially. And he does a fantastic job in switching from what he was in the beginning to what he ultimately becomes. And over the course of the movie, you see it slowly happening, and in all these moments, he just becomes slightly more intimidating, and like his fighting really shows that he's a capable fighter from what he's learned from a character like Josh Brolin. and so on and so forth. And yeah, so like he was great in this movie. um, we also have like some other people. Zendaya, who is our other main character, I'd say, she does an amazing job as Chani. Obviously, we don't see her too much in the first one because she doesn't really have much of a role. You just see her in visions. But obviously, in the second one, that's where she really shines. And one thing that I love about Zendaya in a lot of her movies or TV shows that she is in, she's able to convey so much and say so much just simply from her eyes, and we can really see that during a lot of the scenes in the movie. Just her facial reactions are just so great in this movie, and what she does. And English. I'll go more into that a little later on when I kind of go into the more spoiler-esque part of this, and I will definitely give you guys a fair warning about when I do decide to go into more spoiler territory. But right now I'm just gonna go over like the actors and stuff like that and actresses. But I mean and also before I go into spoiler, I'll kind of talk about the formats that I've seen in this movie and what I recommend and all that, and just some other things. But I mean, another key person in the movie is, what's it called? Sorry. Rebecca Ferguson's character, Lady Jessica, who is Paul's mother. She did a stellar performance as well. You know, obviously, she was kind of in the same boat as Paul, and then for the movie, and then was put into this different role that she didn't really want to be, but was ultimately like, do it or things are gonna die. Like, not things are gonna die, you're gonna die. And she killed it as well up there. And you know, she becomes a role model, the one who's like people go to for like counsel, so to speak. And she's also like, she's supposed to spread all these rumors and essentially lies that Paul is going to be the one that's going to lead them to paradise and save the Fremen from the Harkonnens and like bring peace back to Arrakis. Meanwhile, it's at the end of the day, it's just kind of like a load of bullshit and hope that was created just to give the Fremen something to believe in. Meanwhile, it's like ultimately not true. Although, obviously, Paul does become all these things in a way, but that was only due to like constant years of manipulation among like just family trees, kind of similar. You'll probably also realize that Dune is very similar to Star Wars, and that's because George Lucas actually got the inspiration to make Star Wars from Dune. So you'll realize like Paul and Anakin are very similar. The fact that like Anakin was quote unquote said to be created to be the chosen one by Palpatine or whatever. You could say the same thing about Paul, but that's what, you know, his mother's purpose is supposed to be. And like, she has some definitely very interesting moments in the movie doing this and kind of just being like this like creepy character, especially the fact that throughout the movie, you know, she's pregnant, and that's like a whole big plot point in the book, which is different from the movie. But obviously she still has a child, but it's just not born, and how that like works out and the change for that is just great. And then you obviously, funny thing is, it actually became like a meme, was Stilgar, how he was just like one person, or not one person, but one of the main people that was like so focused that Paul was the one who was going to be the chosen one, essentially. And he's like, oh, it's written, This is him. This is like the Lisan al Gaib, which, if you don't know, translates roughly to Messiah, kind of like this Jesus like character. And he's just like always hyping him up through the movie. It's like, oh, yeah, you're right. You are it. And it's like Paul's like, I don't want to do that. And he does a stellar performance as well. I mean, there's so many other actors. Obviously, one more that I'll add just to move things along is Austin Butler, who plays Fade Rotha. And my gosh, or my god, whatever, he is fantastic in this movie and solidifying him as one of the greatest actors ever, especially after coming off Elvis, how dedicated he gets into these roles. He does the same thing for Fade Rotha, who is the nephew of kind of your main villain, Baron Vladimir Harkonnen. And what he does is, and what he did in order to prepare for this movie is he met with a dialect coach or voice coach, whatever you want to call it, to sound exactly like the actor who played Vladimir Harkonnen. And I honestly, I'm a firm believer that if you listen to them side by side, right, you wouldn't know if it was Austin Butler. I think his name is Bill Skarsgård. I know it's Skarsgård. You guys can correct me in the comments. But, I mean, he just, in order to really just dedicate himself to the role, he wanted to sound exactly like him. And it's crazy how identical he sounds. Like, you really wouldn't be able to tell if you weren't looking. Or maybe if you could, I don't know. But it would be very hard to say nonetheless. And he's a great villain. He's just like this psychotic villain, and he's very confident about his fighting. And I'll kind of get more into one thing I definitely loved was his opening scene. You kind of see it in some of the trailers, is like that gladiator scene, on which is a killer way to introduce your villain. In this like gladiator arena where he's fighting people. Great way to introduce a villain. But I mean, one thing that Dune Part 2 gets done so well is the cinematography, the shots. All the shots in the movie were just, you can tell, were just done so perfectly so that the movie would look so appealing and beautiful. And it was just utterly fantastic. And so you had some of these immense wide shots that you're just like, you really get to like see what Arrakis is like and the beauty of Arrakis. While yes, it's a desert planet, it still has beauty, and that these wide shots can see it. Now, to what I was saying earlier about the formats I've seen, like I said, also I've seen Dune Part 2 twice. I saw it in 4DX, which is where like, the seats move and all that. You're like kind of, but you guys, I assume, know what 4D is. However, what I recommend you see this movie in, and the format that you go see it in, is IMAX, because not only did Denis Villeneuve say that you should watch this movie in IMAX, and it says it's filmed for IMAX, you might just think, oh, it's a way for them to make more money because IMAX tickets are a little bit more expensive than your traditional ticket. That is 100% not the case. I saw it in IMAX, and it was a much better experience, because how IMAX is filmed and the technology that's used, it really makes you feel immersed into that world. And with those wide, like so I was saying, those wide shots and the cinematography, you really feel like you're in the movie with all these characters, and it's just beautiful. And definitely go see it in IMAX. You can see so much more in IMAX. It's a different quality. Highly recommend. Whether you have digital IMAX or real IMAX, there's a difference. I'm not going to go into depth on that. If you guys are interested in looking at what the difference is, definitely do that on yourself, so it's actually kind of interesting to see where it's what. And if you actually have a real IMAX theater or a digital IMAX theater near you. But enough about IMAX. I also loved Hans Zimmer and the score and the soundtrack of this movie. It was incredible in the first one, and yet again, he does not miss once more. I mean, all the songs or from the soundtrack are just masterpieces. Not one of them is bad. If you think one of them is bad, I'm sorry to say there's probably something wrong with you. I can see not liking the movie, but just the music is just something else. It's out of this world. Little pun there. Sorry. Um, but I think as of right now, I'm going to tread into spoiler territory. So, if you do not want to see spoilers, please click off now and go see Dune Part 2 and come back when you've seen it and see what I think more in depth. And now, before I get into spoilers, I just want to say that YouTube is telling me that about 90% of you who watch our videos are not subscribed. So, if you like our videos, subscribe. It really helps us out a ton, and we'd all appreciate I'm sorry, I can't use words. We'd all appreciate it over at the Multiverse Mayhem team. I know we love to have your support. So, like I said, if you do find yourself enjoying it, subscribe, leave a like, because we'd all really appreciate it and it helps us out. But moving over to the spoiler section of Dune Part 2. This movie had so many great scenes. Some of my favorite scenes ever, and they're just how they are made is incredible to see. One scene is is the sandworm scene when we go see Paul Atreides ride a sandworm for the first time. And how that scene was shot was just crazy. You could see ultimately like the struggle that he was facing it, like the hardness of it, and you almost felt that you were there with him when seeing this movie, especially when you saw it in IMAX. It's like you really felt like you were there because of how crazy it was, the feeling, how it was shot, and that scene was just one of the best scenes ever in a movie, I'd say, without a doubt. And it kind of also encapsulates like sandworms in a way, and how the Fremen ride them, because we heard about it previously, but it's like you really see how hard it can be. And yeah, I mean, it's phenomenal. You'll be hearing me say that a lot. And yeah, that scene was just fantastic. And even I was watching an interview with Timothy Chalamet. He was like, yeah, I was getting like blasted with sand and everything. It's like you in that moment, I feel like you were kind of worried. It's like, obviously we all knew that he obviously would not die from this because they wouldn't kill the main character. But it's like, you're like, oh my god, it's like, is he gonna survive this or something like that? And it was really interesting to kind of see that and how that was made and all this. And yeah, but moving on to another scene is, I'm gonna go to the gladiator scene with the introduction of Phaedra. I do apologize if I'm all over the place with different scenes. Just whatever pops in mind first, I kind of talk about. I'm not gonna go like chronological order with these scenes, but the introduction of Phaedra with the gladiator scene, like I was saying earlier, is one of the craziest ways to introduce your main villain. I mean, you really show that his fighting style and how like kind of crazy he is, and this whole scene when you like kind of the introduction of Phaedra on the Harkonnen home planet Getty Prime, which I believe that was called, but if I'm wrong, you guys can correct me in the comments. And yeah, that was an incredible scene. How they did it was they the Harkonnens had captured former members of the House Atreides who they didn't kill, and they drugged them for him to fight in his on his birthday as like a gift or a present, which is kind of messed up and fucked up if you ask me. It's like, yeah, here it's your birthday. Here's some men to kill, but I guess whatever. And they had him. Two of them were drugged, and then the third one wasn't, to give him more of a challenge and see like he would survive. He's like, you can even see he's like, wait, why isn't this one drugged? Like, what the hell? And he even says that to his uncle, which is Vladimir Harkonnen. And he's like confused. He's like, were you trying to kill me? But obviously, he did ultimately succeed, even though it. You could see it like someone he was like also almost struggling. So it's like he's not this crazy warrior and scary figure. It's like he was set out to be before we met him. And yeah, it was great to see that. And then there's the very, I'm sure you guys have heard like or I don't know if you've heard, but there's kind of like a controversial part of Dune Part 2 where it's also on like kind of like in the same scene, but after the gladiator part is where Vladimir Harkonnen is gifting Fade a Arrakis because his other nephew Rabin, played by Dave Bautista, isn't doing like the best of jobs. So he's like, yeah, Rabin is done. I'm gonna give you Arrakis, and I want you to get Spice back up and all that. But in that moment, Vladimir Harkonnen gives Feyd-Rautha a kiss on the lips, and they're related, which is very weird if you ask me. But hey, Harkonnens do what Harkonnens want, I guess, right? Can't really stop them. But that was very weird and controversial. When I saw that both times, I was like, okay, yeah, still weird. Or just initially, I'm like, what the hell is actually happening? That's so weird to see. But that was a great introduction. Okay, I guess we're done with gameplay of zombies for now. So I'll finish it like this. I do apologize that it's being like that. But so moving on to a different scene is, one scene that just gave me the goosebumps and just I was like so shocked came after Paul drank the worm poison and essentially became what he didn't want to become, but he felt like he had to do what was right, and that was become the Lisan al-Gaib and drink like the water of life and all that. And the scene when he walks into like the war council and is just giving the speech where it's like, I am the chosen one. No, and everyone's like, people are like, you can't speak, and they're like trying to get ready to like fight him, and he's like, none of you can take me, because once he drank that water of life, he became the most powerful being in the universe, and solidifying him as the Messiah, the one to bring peace to Arrakis and all this. And just everything that he said was like intimidating, and going on how he was intimidating. It's like there are so many scenes in the movie where it's like he's just walking like towards the frame, like walking into the frame or whatever, and he just looks so intimidating. It's when you can really see that in the scene once Rabin goes to like try to kill them, like kill some of the Fremen and get rid of them, or as he likes to call them, rats. And they're slowly dying, and it's like all the amongst the sand. It's like you can't really see anything. There's like kind of like a small sandstorm going on, and then you just see him like start walking into frame, and Rabin sees it and like flips out and runs away because he's like terrified. And I loved that. It was so interesting to see, and just seeing Timothy or Paul just like walk in just looks so like intimidating and like terrifying. They're like this big bad, or one of the big bads, it's like, yeah, fuck this, I'm out. But back to that speech, it's like him just saying everything he was just saying is like, how serious he got, and ultimately just terrifying. And then people were just like, "Wow." That's I feel like that's when like everyone started believing like that he was the one. Like obviously, except for Chani in the movie, which she's like, "This is all bullshit," and which it ultimately was, but now it's like coming into tuition, or into fruition, whatever that word is. Um, but now moving to Chani is one of the main differences between her in the book and the movie is that in the book she's more of your traditional Arab woman who is okay with Paul, or not Paul essentially, but just your traditional Arab woman who is okay with her husband or partner, significant other, whatever you want to say, being off with different women. She's okay with that, and especially in the books, Shani is very supportive of Paul. No matter what, she always has his side, and obviously in the book, not in the book, I'm sorry, in the movie, Denis Villeneuve decided to change her character and modernize her more, which I think was a fantastic thing to do because, I mean, she still killed it and it made her more modern. I know I literally just said that, but it was a unique change to the character where in this movie we can see that she's like she says to Paul, "I'll always be with you and always love you as long as you remain who you are." Obviously, this is before he drinks the water of life and becomes the Messiah, right? And before he kind of lets the power get to his head, which is you can see clearly see what happens. He becomes like this essentially warlord, this evil warlord or tyrant, and he ultimately becomes the villain in a way, but not really. He's more like an anti-hero. But and then moving a little bit forward to the end fight scene when they're planning everything out, how they're gonna attack like the capital of the northern section of Iraq. This is great. Um, you can say like, Timothy Chalamet is like, yeah, I'm in charge. Like you're gonna do what I say. And one of my favorite parts is just of that is when you just see the worms enter that scene, and it's just like kind of like whoa, you know, and that was just done so well, and you're just like, oh my god, that's actually like kind of low key terrifying at the same time, and then like we get this whole big battle where we can also see that while Paul gets visions, that they're not always true. Because in the first one, we saw him fighting in this same very fight, but it was him in like that suit of armor. But when it actually happened, it was Chani. So it's like his visions might be correct, but not fully, which is a interesting touch, to say the least. It's like, yeah, he's not always right. And then we got he goes in to the main city and kills Baron Vladimir Harkonnen, and then wants to ultimately kill the Emperor, played by Christopher Walken, who, during the very few scenes that he did a good job, and just how he's like stepping up to this very powerful man. It's like, yeah, I'm gonna kill you. But his daughter's like, spare his life, and we'll do like trial by combat essentially, and pick your champions. But however, Paul doesn't pick his champion. He's like, I'm confident in myself. It's like I'm powerful. I can like fight anybody. Fade Rotha eventually does fight him, and that fight was incredibly well choreographed, and props to them for doing that. Obviously, Paul Atreides does kill Fade Rotha, solidifying his role as emperor, even though a lot of the people are like that great houses that come to Arrakis after this whole big debacle is happening. They're like, yeah, we don't want you. But he's like, yeah, well, fuck you. I'm going to be it anyway. And then what I think is kind of what I was saying about how Chani was modernized, another difference is Paul looks at her and says, I will love you as long as I breathe. And then turns around and says to the Emperor's daughter, like, let's get married and rule together. Like, I'll take your hand in marriage. And then she's just like, you can see then it pans her and you just see like the betrayal in her eyes and like just in her, like especially in her eyes mostly. So you can see like the betrayal and how hurt she's feeling. And then she just goes off into this and just leaves Paul because he's like, you literally just lied to me. And just seeing her, and the movie ends as she's just going off into the distance. There's so much more I can say about this movie. I know I was a bit all over the place, but I don't want to make this too long. So I do thank you guys for watching my Dune Part 2 review. You can always let us know what you guys think in the comments. And yeah, but now, like I said in the beginning, a big announcement, not big, but announcement that is happening is I did make a Discord server for you guys to join, and you guys can communicate with us, give us your thoughts and all that, get to know us or whatever. We get to know you guys. You guys can interact with us in a more easier manner. I did create a community post earlier today about that, but I also provide a link to that in the description. So, yeah. Thanks, guys, for watching. And remember, if you like our stuff, please feel free to like and subscribe and turn on that bell so you don't miss any of our future uploads. Thanks, guys, and see you next time.